So there is a broad coalition for American communities. It's gathering tomorrow, March for Israel, and it's happening at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. It is to show the support for Israel and Jews. I wish I could be there. I could not rearrange my schedule, but I highly recommend that you go tomorrow. I've checked this out 6 ways to Sunday. These organizations I don't agree with on everything, but on this I absolutely agree. March for Israel tomorrow at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. We have Rob on. Rob Schneider is with us now. He just turned 60. Hey, old man, how are you?
I don't know how that happened. Am I have to join that AARP?
I know. I think you got till 65. I think. I don't know. I'm only 59, so.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm not old like you yet.
All right, Junior.
Okay. So, Rob, you wrote a great article about your journey into 60 and your advice at 60, but you also talk about you've become a practicing Catholic. Were you Christian your whole life and just never practicing, or what's your story?
Yeah, I was kind of going through life slugging along, ignoring God, and pretending like there was I kind of like the atheist mistake of and they're my friends atheists, but they make the mistake of thinking like this whole universe is just this gigantic thing expanding and bumping into stuff and that's meaningless and that we are some accidental freak of intelligence that just happened and it'll all go away and I just think that if as my buddy Norm Macdonald said we're a small fraction of the universe, so if there is such a thing as compassion, love, and empathy, then it must be endemic to this whole thing that we exist in. And I think that little voice of Jesus Christ was always coming back to me, even though I was going away from him. And then finally, I think during all of this and kind of more obvious, I don't know how else to say it, but more obvious evil in the world. And I think it kind of it gave me I kind of got back to it that way, because if there is this really organized evil in the world, and I don't think it's at all more powerful, but I do think it's here to challenge us as individually, as a family, as a community, and I think also as you and I have come to really understand now as a nation.
Yeah.
That I think we you coming to God and realizing that as Father Ripperger said, and I don't have the thing. Some people are having a question about Christianity is in Jesus, whatever form it is. For me, Catholicism works because it's the closest to the word. It's the closest to the actual word of Jesus through the Greek and the Latin. And that's why it works for me.
So, but I saw an article about this let me look. I think it was Christianity Today. No, ChristianPost.com, and it talked about how you have failed in the past to show Christ's forgiveness to those who you disagree with. And it's really beautiful stuff that you've said about forgiving people, et cetera, et cetera. But then it goes into, but he's repeatedly weighed in on LGBTQ related issues on his X account. He was talking about the female athlete getting spiked in the face by a male competing with the women. And he wrote, "This has got to stop. If parents, coaches, and women athletes all refuse to play against these men, it all stops." And then he was on the Glenn Beck program, and he talked about gender mutilation. And so they're trying to say that, see, you really haven't changed because you're not forgiving of those things.
Well, that's a difference between Christ doesn't want us to just stand down and accept evil and forgive evil and let it to perpetuate. Christ wants us to stand up against it. You don't want to you have to Christ knocked over the the merchants that were no longer practicing at the temple, because he showed a righteous anger. We have to protect the most vulnerable members of our society, our children. Now, there's this weird justification that it seems to be okay for women now to suddenly, for the, quote, progress, they need to take a back seat to other men, and that's what these people are. They're men. They're not women in any way, shape, or form. And there's this strange societal narcissism that is somehow accepted in some ways, is I think an attack on women, which is an attack on God. And I think we need to stand up and protect them. And it's just there is evil that can perpetuate, and you know it's wrong, and the people know it's wrong. And I'm glad that the female athletes like Riley Gaines are actually talking and stepping up. And my wife actually corrected me, because I said, why don't the student athletes and these women step up, these, who are these swim teams or basketball teams or whatever, or volleyball teams, step up and say something? And she said, they do, but people aren't listening to them because people don't listen to women. And I said, wow. I mean, I think she's right.
I will tell you that there's a great misunderstanding on speaking the truth. That's all that Christ spoke, was the truth. And sometimes people don't like it. Oh, well, it doesn't mean I stop loving you because you're my brother or sister. And I hope that, at some point truth corrects you and you come on the side of truth. But I don't hate you, and that's why I don't take it out, or try not to take it out on you. It's really hard. It's really hard.
It is hard. It is hard. And it's supposed to be hard. And it's supposed to be difficult. But we have to try to, we have to trust that righteous instinct. And it's there to challenge us. But we cannot be silent, and we cannot stand down when especially the most vulnerable members of our society are now under attack. And I think it's the LGBTQ community that's not the whole community, but the community that is pushing this knowingly knows it's wrong, because they went to a group of attorneys and they got advice about how to do this, and they said don't do it with any publicity as far as the gender issues and the gender what they call protections. And it's interesting because they just renamed protections for something that is the opposite of it, which is mutilation. Because you have I just tell people who because they use our goodwill against us, which is inherently evil. But if these children can't vote, we don't allow them to drive, we don't allow them to own a gun, we don't allow them to join the army, or get even tattoos, because they are not capable of making these permanent decisions about these things. But yet we're able to do these horrible, and they are horrible, horrible things that have lifelong repercussions. And you see, in Prager University, there's a wonderful film. Well, I say wonderful, but there was a very knowledgeable and informing film about the detransitioners. And it's just, it's criminal. And what it is, it's sad. And let the child at least turn 18 before they decide to do something. I think 18 also. My child, my oldest one, my daughter, she wasn't an adult at 18 either. I mean, truthfully, the brain doesn't stop till 25.
Right.
So, but I do think at least at a minimum, if you have any conscience at all, then there should be any faith at all. Then you wait till they're 18 before they make a decision, and just don't jump on any new fads, especially a fad that has the real evil of it is this idea that they can be infertile and just destroy themselves for life. I think there is really an attack on babies. There's an attack on girls. There's an attack on women.
This whole thing is a culture of death. I mean, you look at what's happening with the Palestinian rallies, where they're openly chanting, death to Jews and send them to Germany and all of these horrible, horrible things. Every bit of this evil,
coming at us, yeah,
is culture of death.
It is a culture of death. It's a culture. It's just, I think there's different ways to get at this, and my coming to Christ was also in a logical sense of, I do think you have the atheists now who have, it's like the opposite of the Snopes trial. The Snopes trial, which cornered in Snopes trial, which in the 1920s, which was about Christianity and evolution, and the idea that Christianity was trying to close in and limit the idea of God's plan of which could have been evolutionary in part for sure, was basically putting a fanatic spin on Christianity and faith. What you have now is the opposite of the Snopes trial. You have a fanaticism coming from the atheists, coming from godless people, and that are not wanting to see the potentiality of God and the potentiality of what they're doing could be wrong. And just the real exposing this is seeing the lgbtq community who are supporting Hamas and Palestinians. And it's like somebody's got to whisper in their ear, hey, they would kill you in a minute.
Yeah.
They'll stone you to death. These are not people. These are murderers. You have to call them what they are. And the sad thing about the pro-Palestinian things you see on campus, and you see, it's like, when they say do not forget, never forget the Holocaust, it's because it is something that can be forgotten, and it is being forgotten because it's the very few remaining Holocausts survivors who are children now, very young children. Now, makes you realize a terrible thing, Glenn, which is that the idea that the Holocaust could have been, that's an end to this horrible anti-Semitism. You realize that it isn't, that it's just,
nope.
There's going to be it was an apex of anti-Semitism, that there is going to be a continuation of pogroms and an attack on these people and on these people, because it is a continuation of anti-Semitism. It is certainly not anywhere near the end of it. And for people who war is hell, and the idea that somehow there's a clean war or there's a way to do it. I mean, the death of children in any situation is abhorrent and horrible. And and you try to prevent it the best you can. But if I remember thinking of Robert McNamara, who was working with the Air Force during World War II, they were talking about the firebombing of Japanese cities, and which was,
horrific.
Something that horrific, absolutely horrific. Dresden was absolutely horrific. Maybe more people died in Dresden than Nagasaki and Hiroshima combined. The bombing of Dresden in World War II, towards the end of, but to bring Germany to its knees to end that war was a greater good, and it's all horrible. But the idea that Hamas is going to be allowed to survive in any form now, for our questioning of it is, what is going to replace it? That's the question. But you can't sit back and allow your people to be slaughtered. No, your babies, you can't. And so we have to stand with Israel, and we have to know that this is something that it's not going to be easy, and there's going to be. I mean, it's going to require prayer. It's going to require God's help. It's going to require our help. But we have to be there for that and not give in to this Hamas publicity campaign, which they're very good at.
We're talking to Rob Schneider. He's actor, comedian, writer, and he's just written a piece for theblaze.com, The Gift of Turning 60, where he talks about this and so much more. And you can find that on the front page of The Blaze. Rob, great talking to you. Thank you so much.
Always. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your faith.
You bet. Right. Godspeed.